Welcome to our let's do this together.
Welcome to our podcast.
I'm Zeilingold.
And I'm Untitled.
And we are so excited to be offering this mortgage information. And I thought we'd just talk about like how we all started in the mortgage business.
Well, let's start with telling our audience, whoever doesn't know, our relationship. How's that, Stein?
Is it one we want to discuss?
I think so. I don't think we have...
I'm not embarrassed of it.
So I think that it's like, we can't even hide it because I think we do look like each other.
Okay. We are sisters.
Okay. So let's talk about how we started. You're the elder sister. I know I look older.
I'm Kaji and old. Next week we'll both join the ranks of being mother-in-laws.
Oh my gosh. Yes, that's true.
Okay. So being more as you get older, the years smash down.
Oh, so okay, no problem. So you're saying that it's not only the fact that you look younger than me, I'm gonna be even to you soon.
Correct. So, but I did get into the mortgage business first based on my seniority of age. So how did I get into the business? So I'll tell you the truth, realtors, you can be shocked. I started off as a realtor. My sister was driving in the car and she heard an ad for Century 21 saying exciting new career in real estate. And she said, "Hey, Ann, would you like to be a realtor too?" I said, "Sure, why not?" And so I took the test and I took the course and the test back then and I passed and I joined the local real estate office and I hated the office. There was like a lot of, office terrorism there.
Hold on, I this is something new. Were you a good realtor? Because the realtors have a really hard business.
I sucked as a realtor. I was a realtor for 9 months. We had a computer that was like this big. And every day we were like a very advanced real estate company because we had the computer and we had a fax machine. And every day we had chick, and new listings would come out on this like really wide green and white paper. And every other agency would have to drive to the MLS office and get the daily cards of the listings of the day. Well, we got them actually on our computer.
Wow, so you were progressive.
Yeah, so I learned a lot. I actually sold 2 houses, and the funny thing is that one of the houses I sold, I did a mortgage on it like 18 years later, and I sold also a co-op, and I had 1 listing. That was my extent of my real estate career.
How did you get your listing?
I don't remember. It wasn't I don't remember. I think I sat in an open house with somebody, and the guy came in, and he wanted to sell his house. It was pure dumb luck.
All right, so that's very interesting. I didn't even know that. And then what made you go from a realtor to lender?
So,
which, by the way, I think is a smart move because their work is so much harder than ours.
I know they have to do those emotional highs and lows. I find that so difficult. But what happened was I was in the office and I was very shy. I was 18 years old, and there was one woman there.
Hold on. You were shy?
Very shy. I was so shy. You don't know how shy I was. I was scared of my shadow. I was afraid to make phone calls.
Really?
I was so shy. And
oh my God. I'm getting like, this is very funny because we're sisters, but I'm getting a lot of surprises.
Yeah, I was so shy. Anyway, so I had this one girl who was in the office and she was pregnant and she was overdue by like 2 weeks. And every day that she didn't have that baby, she came with another contract. She was on fire. But when she worked with her husband, it was a husband and wife team, and the husband and wife, they put both names on the contractors for credit. And when they were out of the office, there was a lot of talk about them. Oh, he doesn't do anything. She does all the work. He takes the credit. And then one time there's an offhand comment like, "Oh, these people left the company. They opened their own. Oh, how we got all messed up because of them." And I didn't love the office environment, and I wanted to leave, but I was afraid to leave because what would they say about me? So I got a call from this really old attorney. He's not alive anymore. His name is Mr. Worksman. And he worked as a title searcher in Hackensack, New Jersey. And he recommended me to this new mortgage company out of Hackensack that was opening an office in Tarrytown. And they wanted loan officers. So I got a phone call from this new manager out of Connecticut who's opening in Tarrytown. They wanted me to be their first loan officer covering Rochel. And this was my ticket out of the real estate office. And that's how I started.
That's very interesting. So that's a good story. So did you ever say thank you to that attorney?
No, he died before I had any success.
I hear you. So I actually gave you a public thank you the other day.
Yes, so how did you get into the business?
So,
It's not going to be a secret to me.
well, what happened was that I got out of, I was in high school when I was offered a summer job in the company that you work for. And I worked there when I was in high school, a summer job. And I don't know if you remember, but the manager kept calling me. He says, don't go to 12th grade. Just come back. And I was like, I'm never working in that office. They smoked like the cigarette, it was covered with ashtray. It was horrible. And everybody, I was like, I was this little girl and everybody was like yelling and screaming. I'm like, I'm never going into that place.
Do you remember the baseball bat?
Oh,
He would swing a baseball bat around the office. I was like, ooh.
It was like a big culture shock to me. I was like a nice, good girl in school. And then I would go into this scary, yelling, screaming office. And so when I got out of high school, I got a job in a real estate company. But it was like a management company. It wasn't a realtor. And I was extremely bored. I remember I did everything I had to do, like my job duties. I took care of it in the first 10 minutes of the day. I had nothing to do.
I remember what happened. What were you doing all day there?
I was like, and internet was just like, AOL just came out, and I was chatting, and I was having fun. I was exploring the internet. I didn't know what to do. I was so bored.
And then I remember talking to you, telling me about your day. And I went to that chain smoker and said, my sister needs to be here starting tomorrow.
Right, and that's why. So I started off as a processor. And do you remember how good of a processor I was?
She was the best processor because she didn't process for me.
I was the worst processor. Everybody knows it. I probably closed the most files.
Yep.
I closed a lot.
In those days, we didn't have like the automatic AOS, so she would call the underwriter, and as the underwriter was supposed to be underwriting the file, she'd be sweet talking the underwriter about something random, and at the end of the conversation, she got her commitments and cleared her closes.
So what happened was in those days also, it was a different world. You would submit a loan to the bank, and if they denied it, you could just take the exact same file and go somewhere else. It wasn't like you had to do appraisal changes. It was just so, we worked by fax. It was just so different. And if I made a mistake, nobody trained me. If I made a mistake, I learned not to make the mistake again. And I would just remember working really, really hard. And then I remember the loan officers coming over to me and saying, I'm scared of this client. You're not scared. Can you call them for me? And I was like, yeah, sure. That was the best part of my day. And then, now I just remembered, you know how I started? Remember that guy Gigi who worked in our company?
No.
So he had this guy Gigi. I don't want to say, I'm using the code word because I'm still scared of him. He was part of a very big mafia family. The last name started with G. And he would tell me these stories, and I always thought he was a huge liar. And I was doing a loan for the people. He would bring in loans, and I would just handle everything. And I was doing the loans for the people who, I don't even want to say, I'm not going to give details, but it was a big Italian company. And the guy called me up, and he goes, did you hear what happened? And I'm like, what? He goes, well, Gigi came to my house, and he asked me to hide his gun. And I'm like, what? And he goes, yeah, he killed somebody. It really happened. And I was like, what? And I ran to the manager, and I'm like, I don't know what's going on. He goes, okay, just stay out of it. So he said, take over all his files. And I said, okay. And I took over his files, and that's how I got my first.
I was going to ask you how you started to do loans from processing.
Yeah, because this guy.
So basically, you're working. One of the people one of the loan officers that sent you business to process and to take care of, went out of commission. And you just took over his pipeline.
Yeah, he came over to me and says, take over his pipeline. And then I learned the art of nurturing the client and asking for referrals. And that was my first client base.
Well, if you remember something, when we're going backwards many, many years, I had a very different business than yours. The business, the way you were processing, when you became the specialist or the person who handled in our company, we're going back how many years ago, 24 years ago, a long time ago.
I'd say 23.
23 years ago. You handled the subprime market.
Correct.
The subprime market was something that I barely ever dealt into. I wrote my first subprime loan in 2001, when there was a refinance boom to 5.25%. Rates had been around 8, and there was a refinance boom, 5.25%, and then rates went up very fast, just like, almost like now, but not as fast. And there's one subprime company that offered was New Century Mortgage. They offered 5.25% for a vanilla buyer, somebody with like over a 700 FICO score, had more than 90% equity in their home. They had this special at 5.25%, and I used this New Century program, which was a fantastic loan for the people that fell out of the regular loans because rates had gone up so fast, and they hadn't gone up yet. And so those were the first subprime loans I wrote, but they really were prime loans that I put in a subprime company.
Got you. No, so my experience was the tougher borrowers, and tougher borrowers could have been people who were putting down 0%. We remember that program, I think it was option 1, that you
85-15.
No, it was 106%. That
Really?
they paid for your closing costs. So the client literally didn't have to put down $1. And that was the loans we were writing. Like, that's what I was used to. So it was also like these, everybody has a transition. It was a transition for me to understand that there are people who actually put money down and, you know, have money vested into a property.
So our businesses were totally different. I always handled first-time home buyers.
Yeah.
I had a lot of realtor relationships. I started my business nurturing a client. I still do those things today. I'd find out their name, their birthday, where they're living. I had a spreadsheet. This is my original CRM, was a Excel spreadsheet where I had 3, 6, 9 months. I called them every third month, 6 months, 9 months after closing, annually on the birthday. I called them on the birthday of the house, home anniversary, and I called them on their birthdays. I still do that today, by the way. Every single day I have a list of birthday calls, 30, 60, 90 anniversary calls. I do that still today. But that's how I started my business, with nurturing of clients, a big client base.
Right. So that to me, that took me, I didn't even understand that aspect of it. And that's something I had to learn. So everybody has like their own learning process, and everybody comes from different ends. But the joy of closing a loan and helping a borrower is, I still feel the same as that.
Right.
It's like that little like exhilaration is still there.
Well, it's interesting. I think you can learn something from everybody and every time. So I learned how to nurture a client, not from somebody in the mortgage world or from the real estate world. I actually learned it from an insurance broker. Her name is Lisa Rosen. Most of you may even know her. She's still writing insurance today. She came to my office and showed me a catalog. And in that catalog, there's a bunch of cards. And she showed me how she keeps in touch with through clients or prospects through cards. And I bought into that. And that's how I started. I bought cards. I had cards for every stage of the post-closing. And then from there, I graduated into systems that were designed for mortgage and real estate world, and so on and so forth. But I learned that from her. And along the way, I learned a lot from you too. Because, you know, when we started, as your business grew and my business grew, I learned to lean on you because you became an expert on things I wasn't good at, like the commercial world. You are an expert in the commercial world, and I lean on you to help me with my commercial buyers.
Right, or vice versa, like, you know, very interesting guidelines, or you're an expert at income.
Am I a guideline freak? I don't know, every time I hear a guideline, I can't forget it. You know when someone tells you something, like a nice piece of information, and you remember like 50% of it? When it comes to anything guideline and mortgage or real estate related, I can't forget it.
I try very hard to forget things. I just don't want to hear any of the tough guidelines. I only want the easy ones. And I'll fight. You should know. You know what happened last night?
What happened last night?
Do you know that new guideline, or the new interpretation of the guideline, that a borrower has to receive an appraisal 3 days before the closing?
I knew that. What's the new interpretation?
The new interpretation is that there's even a slight change.
Where they change something on it?
Yeah. If they change, let's say the appraiser made a mistake on a comp and wrote that there's 2 bedrooms and there was really 3.
Mm-hmm.
Technically, you have to wait 3 days.
Well, that's why it's really, really important. Just going in that vein, we have a lot of clients that will get a seller's concession along the way. They'll start a file, let's say they buy a house for $500,000. Let's use that, or $1 million. Doesn't matter what number. I have that right now. I have a client buying a house and there's a pool table in it. And it says on the contract, house includes pool table. Underwriter said the pool table has a value. What's the value? The attorney says 0 value. Underwriter said, no, a pool table has a value. So that value has to be deducted from the price of the house and accounted for. So the truth of the matter is the client doesn't even want the pool table, but it's coming with the house. So what we ended up doing was the value of the pool table is now about $1,000, and the client will be getting a seller's concession at closing for $1,000. So therefore, that's how the loan is going to close. So the appraiser has to change the appraisal now, saying that there's a $1,000 seller's concession on this property, which it wasn't before. So that kind of change, a lot of times we find these things out. This was a particular example that we're dealing with before closing, but there's sometimes right before closing, they go in there, the toilet doesn't work, so they get a $500 credit. All those credits, if they're on the closing statement, are deemed concessions and have to be on the appraisal.
So I'll just tell you what happened last night. That's my point. So knowing the guidelines is so important, because what I did was, when I was told that my file needed to wait 3 days and my client was at the closing table and he had a moving truck and everybody's waiting and I suddenly have to wait 3 days, I went and I pulled up the Consumer Protection Bureau guidelines. I read it, and my interpretation was material change, meaning there was no value change. And I said it's open to interpretation. Guess what? I got on the phone with attorneys, experts at this, and I went all the way up the chain and I won it. My file closed last night. Because of course I'm right. I'm always right. So
And by the way, y'all's always right.
so I fought it, but normally, but that's what I'm trying to say. A lot of these guidelines, it's open to interpretation. Like, that's what I find. Like, you have to read it and know it so well and feel so confident in that fight. Hence, I was able to win.
So I have two premises that I run my business on. The first one is that every single person can buy a house and can get a mortgage. It's never an if, it's when. Sometimes not right now. So I put everyone on a plan. That's number one. And number two, when someone tells me no, I have to find out if it's really a no. I fight every no, because like you said, you have to read guidelines, you have to look at alternatives. It's very easy to tell somebody no and not say yes, but if you understand it like you did, you read the Consumer Protection Act to find out how it affects the client, and you're able to apply it to the mortgage. Right. So same thing with me, when I get a no,
I'll take a no, but I'll take a no if it logically makes sense.
You have to ask a lot of questions.
Yeah.
You can't just take a no because you heard no.
And you want to know something even funny with what happened last night? When I went to, in our own company, and I went to they told me no, and I said, well, that doesn't make sense. They go elsewhere. He referred me to somebody else. So I called that other person. I said, why are they throwing me on you? He goes, he knew you wouldn't back down, and he just didn't have time for you. I took that as the biggest compliment.
Okay, there you go. That's great. Yes, that's it. So for me, we don't take no, and we ask a lot of questions. I'd probably ask more questions than anybody else in this industry. About how many questions do you ask a day on files and on questions in the mortgage world?
It's a lot of questions. You want to know, you want to understand, and the idea for me is that I want to be able to bring the best, take your knowledge and give your next client a better experience or something cool. I love coming up with
cool things.
Yeah, hey, did you know that, I saw your LinkedIn post the other day about New York, the PMI. So I know that rule forever, right? Tons of people don't know it. So
my daughter-in-law called me this morning and goes, does that affect me when you put in a LinkedIn post? So let's talk about that LinkedIn post. So basically, New York State is unique from other states. In New York State, only New York State, to my knowledge, at least in all the states that I'm licensed in, New York State bases their PMI not on the purchase price, but on the appraised value. So if you buy a home in New York State and you're putting less than 20% down, but the house appraises higher, you can actually buy the home without the PMI insurance, PMI, monthly PMI or at closing, as long as you keep the loan to value based on the appraisal at 80%.
So let's just start again, because I want to backtrack a little bit. What's PMI?
PMI is mortgage insurance, private mortgage insurance. There are special companies, different private mortgage insurance companies that insure loans where the borrowers are putting less than 20% down. A little bit of history. Back I think it was 1973, 1974, there was no such thing as PMI, and everybody had to put down 20% down.
Okay, so who does that insurance
Right.
help?
So this PMI insurance insures the lender, not the buyer.
Exactly.
Insures the lender. So if there's a foreclosure, up to that 80%, 20% of equity is covered by this PMI company, and the lender who lent the money has to, the rest of 80% is on him. So it's not like you cannot pay your mortgage because when there's a foreclosure, 20% is not your responsibility. It just is a mortgage, it's an insurance premium that you pay the bank, which insures the bank for you, but insures the bank, not you.
So I recently had a deal where it was a client went to a New Jersey-based loan officer, and the New Jersey guy, he was buying in New York. New Jersey guy did not know the rule. He just called me for a quote, and I was asking questions. I said, by the way, you mentioned that you're getting a really good deal. You don't have to pay a PMI. He's like, what do you mean? And that's where it's like important to like really deal with someone who understands the nuances. Like, Rockland County has different nuances
For sure.
than Westchester.
Right.
And then Tom's River Township has different nuances in Lakewood.
Right.
So that's what I find that fun. People find it annoying. I like that.
Well, the truth is, going back to the PMI, so what happened was that's when you buy the house. Now, after closing, every lender has different rules of how you can get the PMI, take the PMI payment off the loan. So a lot of
Hold on. There's a basic rule, but some lenders interpret it different.
Right, but it's different in New York State.
Right.
That's the thing. So you can have in New York State, if you close on the house today and you pay PMI insurance, and next year your house goes up in value by appraisal, you can talk to your lender and they can actually they order an appraisal through their management company, and the appraisal comes in higher and the loan to value is under a certain threshold, the PMI can be removed from your loan. So just interesting on that note, a couple of years ago, a client of mine thought his house went up in value. He called this was in Rochel County. He called his lender, they sent an appraiser, and the appraiser came in lower than he expected, and they actually wanted to extend his PMI.
What happened?
What happened was that you can also get rid of PMI just by paying down the principal of the mortgage. So he owed, let's say, $500,000, and when he hit, let's say, $440,000, he'd have no PMI based on his original purchase price. So he was busy prepaying his loan. He was prepaying and prepaying. But when the new appraisal came back, they don't have to remove his PMI based on what he prepaid anymore, because the value wasn't there.
Did he write it? Did he rebut that appraisal? I hope.
He did not. He came to me and I refinanced him, and my appraisal came out $150,000 higher. And
So basically, the bank went to a very
conservative appraiser,
or went to an out-of-state or somewhere.
whatever it was, it didn't work out. So
interesting.
So nowadays, I sent out that PMI post because in the last couple of years, homes have gone up 40%, which is unusual.
Right.
So then I got a call from my son and daughter-in-law this morning, and they said, does that mean I can get rid of my PMI payment? Our home went up over $150,000. I said, sure. And I told them to call the lender and what to do. So
That's awesome. So they're probably going to save like $200-300 a month. I hope.
about $180.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
You know what? That's gas. How much did you gas bill?
Last night I went to Harry Potter's Magical Forest in Westchester. It was really nice. And I realized my tank was empty. So I went to this gas station. I said, I don't have any credit cards on me. How am I going to pay for gas? I found $10 in the car. And then I found the credit card. So first I was going to put $10, which is about 2 gallons. It'll take me about 28 miles, which will just get me home. Or I found the credit cards. I put the credit card in the machine, it declines it. So then I put another card in the machine, it declined it. I said, oh my gosh, what's going on? So I went inside to the gas station itself, and they said, oh, the machine's broken there. And they just put my credit card in, and I put $50 in. And he says to me, don't worry, you don't have to come back in. If you put less than 50, we'll automatically reduce the charge. I said, great, but don't worry about it. My car probably takes $100 to fill. So
Yeah, so I know.
gas is very expensive, you're right.
So no, everything went up. So that's what I'm saying. The little things, to me, a lot of people, we're like sort of numb. We wake up in the morning and we see, hey, the rates are 7.5 today, or whatever it is, or today we're going to have a Fed meeting. Rates probably go up again. So I don't know what's going to be. So we just. We get a little bit numb because we see it so often, but it really affects people. And I saw my loaf of bread was $5. It used to be 2. So everything really went up, so we want to be very cognizant of
It's
that.
interesting that our trajectory till today is different. So you said you're in business about 23 years.
Mm-hmm.
I started in 1988, so I'm in business now it's 34 years, I think. Yeah,
I think so.
yeah, 34 years now. I'm in business 34 years. April of 88 is when I started in the mortgage industry. And where we ended up today almost in the same place, but different. And we had different trajectories. So I started first-time home buyers, a lot of client nurturing and real estate nurturing. And I pretty much didn't go off that path till today. That's pretty much where I was. And how was your path?
So I was a little different. I was working a lot with, I got into the first-time home buyers. And then what I realized was when I was talking to my clients, I'd say, going over to their REO, and they'd say they own a building, and then I said, hey, maybe we can do that. And then I started learning the commercial business, which I really love because it's just like an interesting, different nuance. So my premise was, let me follow a client. Let me be with him when he purchases his house.
Klein for life.
And let me be with him when he buys his first building for $1 million. And then, I just closed on a loan for somebody who bought, his $80 million building.
Wow.
So he, it's the same guy. So to me, it's like, I feel like I'm part of his family, I'm following him through, and that's where I want to be. I want to be like the trusted advisor, and really, people talk to me, they're like, what would you do? And I put myself, like, I would say, what would I do if I was your kid? This is how I would recommend. This is what I would do if you were my child. I want to steer you in the right direction. And that has led me to turn down business. Or once a client was purchasing this property in Georgia, and I did a little research calling like a local management company that I had a good relationship with, and they told me that the military base that's there is moving, and the tenants are going to leave. So I called the client up and I said, you're getting a really good deal, but this is the intel, and he was blown away. Calling back and said, I'm not going to buy this property, I'm not interested. So I said, okay, great. And he called me back and goes, why'd you say great? You just lost the deal. I'm like, oh, great for you. You can buy something else. Like, I want to be there with your successes,
So along our paths to this point, we actually worked together a lot, but there's a period of time where you worked in separate ways.
Yeah.
And that was because you wanted to learn the commercial business.
Yeah, so when we demographically, I lived in Brooklyn, you lived in Rockland.
The world has changed now with Zoom and internet.
Yeah.
That's one of the biggest changes in our business, that like right now I'm licensed, I believe it's 14 states. And the majority of my business comes in, of the 14, in 4 states. New York, New Jersey is primary, and then I have Florida and Arizona second. And the other states I do here and there. But where our world has changed, that we could help people, we could work with people, and we can do it on a personal level, even though geographically we're far. But back then, in the, was it the 90s was?
I wouldn't say the 90s.
Oh, 2000s.
Don't date me.
Okay, 2000s, I always felt I had to be local, because
Yeah.
I had to meet people. It wasn't the same.
Right, so yeah, that changed. I think like, if you take COVID taught us that. Like, if you want to look at the positive of the COVID era, the Zooming and all that made it more of like, you don't have to be in person, it's true.
I'm going to tell you a little secret, Yael. Okay? I was Zooming way before COVID. What happened is that I watched you. I learned this from you. You were able to develop business that was demographically far away and maintain it. I didn't know how you did it. And the reason why you did it was because you're an excellent communicator. You're excellent on communication, whether by phone, by text, by WhatsApp, or whatever. But you did it. You created a world. And I was more face-to-face person. So I seeked out before COVID I found Zoom, but I looked for something that was video conferencing because I wanted to see my clients. And that's how I maintain the relationship. So when COVID happened, I was already set up that way, but I so increased it and I so quadrupled it.
And also, there were people who were hesitant and said, now it became the norm. So it became easier that way.
Yeah, but that's what I started to do. But before that, I just totally increased it now. And it's really, it's become a huge part of my business. And also, there are some businesses that's really better in a face-to-face. Like I know people bought houses with videos, but you do know it's better to see the house you're going to buy because you could smell it. You could really see the size of rooms. You don't always get that on the camera, like the angle of the camera. But when it comes to our business, as much as I love the face-to-face interaction, we really could be so super highly effective on a Zoom screen because we're black and white, we're numbers. So we have to show our screen to show what we're doing. We're not showing the house. So for us, it's so highly effective, and that's why I hope this podcast reaches my clients that are in Texas and California and in Massachusetts and everywhere else, because we can be just as effective through a camera as when we're sitting across from somebody.
Can I tell you a funny story about the smell of a house?
I'll tell you one after.
Okay. What's the issue with cats?
They stink. Oh, I'm sorry for cat lovers. They're really very clean and very, very nice.
No.
But
If a cat,
it never goes away, the smell of urine of a cat.
Yes, and it ruins the.
Do you have a cat?
No, I don't have
Because
a cat.
you know this fat boy.
No, because I just don't have a cat. I don't have a mouse problem in my house. If I did.
Everyone who has cats, according to Yael, has a mouse problem.
No, people love cats. But the floorboards actually get ruined. So a client of mine did not know that, and they bought a house that smelled, and they ended up having to spend like a good $50,000 ripping out the beam, like going down to the beam. So that's something to know about cats.
I'll tell you my story of smelling. So in the COVID times, my son bought a house as an investment. Now my son who bought it lives out of the country. So everything was done electronically. And the house was about 2 hours from where I live. So I didn't see the house at the time we signed, because he signed a contract. But before the closing, I did the walkthrough. I walked into the house, and the house reeked of cigarette smoke. It reeked. Had I seen this house when it went up for sale, I would have run away because it just reeked. I couldn't be in the house. I was like, does my hair smell? My clothes? It was, I couldn't stand the smell of the house. Like, I felt the smoke hovering on the walls. That's how bad it was. And I told the realtor, had I known how this house smelled, I would never have let my son buy this house. Anyway, we, just a nice end of that story. He didn't sell the house, but it's probably worth about $100,000 more.
Did he clean the house? Was he able to get the fumes out?
They moved out. Well, smoke you can get rid of. They cleaned. We sent in a thorough person to clean the house, and the house was painted and the floor scraped. And instead of smelling like smoke, it smelled like.
Does your son want to sell the house?
I'm just thinking about it.
Oh, I know a bunch of realtors who would want that listing.
Yeah, not yet. So that's the story. So good. So this is the end of our first podcast. We have a monitor. She's wearing a red hat, and she's really cute, and she's telling us 1 more minute. So this is the first episode. We're looking forward to talking to you again. This is great, Al.
Yeah, well, so you know what? I think we should do this even without a podcast. We never talk. We just work.
I put on my new calendar. We spend an hour together a week.
A week?
A week, 1 hour a week.
Oh my gosh! And now, how long was this? A half hour?
Was too short.
So we're gonna do an hour and a half a week?
Yep.
Oh my gosh!
All right.